My name's Ezra Zygmuntowicz, and I'm going to give a little bit different talk today. It's not super technical. It's more of a kind of story of, story of my life on Rails since it first came out, I guess you might say. It's been a long, kind of fun journey since 2004 when Rails first came out. 2004, I was the webmaster at a little newspaper in Eastern Washington called the Yakima Herald Republic. And I was tasked with rewriting their whole website and their intranet and all this stuff. It was a big, nasty PHP kind of soup. Funny story there is the previous webmaster, before he left, he had on purpose obfuscated his PHP code by running it through some scripts and changing all the variables to X, Y, XX, YY, and then he tried to hold the newspaper ransom for $5 grand to get the script to change it back. And so in my first week there, I got to do a sting operation and get that guy. Anyway. So here I am. I'm the only tech guy at a newspaper. Their website's falling apart, hanging on by pieces. They're like, you need to rewrite this whole thing, plus, our classified intake system, our obituary system, all this stuff. I knew a little bit of PHP, and I really wasn't quite a programmer yet, honestly. So I grabbed a Dive into Python book and a Pickaxe book, and it was Ruby versus Python. And I spent a couple months reading. And honestly, I was about to go write this whole thing in Python. And then this pointy-haired guy, DHH, released, I joined Python and Ruby mailing lists, and this guy released this thing called Rails in, I think it was August of 2004, I can't remember, it was summer. And it was the perfect thing that I needed to write this whole app and the whole thing for the newspaper. So I was like, yes. So I threw away the Python book, and that made my choice for me. So I think, released the first after Basecamp commercial Ruby app for a newspaper in fall of 2004 or whatever. And it was, I kind of ended up getting branded as the deployment guy in the Rails community, because back then, nobody knew how to deploy the thing, including the 37 signals guys, It was like, you were lucky if you had scripts that were restarting your processes 500 times a day instead of 1,000, And so the newspaper was like, here's a couple Linux boxes and an Xserve, and you have to take like 400,000 dynamic hits a day on day one without falling over. And this was Rails in 2004, so. So I was like, okay, well, let's figure out what we can do here. So then it was the race through all the different web servers and light HTTPD and Apache and FCGI and SCGI and Mongrel and proxies and Nginx, and it was a big research run on all that kind of stuff. But I was able to do the transformation and cut over without any problems there, and that site still runs there. I think it still runs on Rails 06 or something. It works, don't touch it. Anyway, so we move on, and so deploying. Anyway, so if you look back at the Ruby on Rails mailing list back in those years, you'll literally find thousands of posts from me while I was figuring it out for myself and trying to help everybody else. So these pragmatic programmer guys, they asked me to write a book on it because there wasn't any books. So I accepted that, and that was a bad decision. Writing books is hard, and it takes a long time, right? So I started writing the book, and I finished it like 3 years later with the help of a couple co-authors that I brought on along the way. But that was mainly because 2005, not a lot happened. I Rails was like actually exploding onto the scene. I was just working my butt off, trying to write that book, learn how to fix all of these deployment problems. It was getting better, but it still sucked back then. And in 2006, I got a call from Tom Mornini, who is still CTO of Engine Yard, and Lance, who was the two guys who were my co-founders in Engine Yard, and they were like, hey, this deployment stuff sucks, but this Ruby on Rails thing is really cool, so let's start a company to fix that, you know, let's do Rackspace for Rails or something like that. And that's where I was headed anyway, so we decided to start brainstorming about this company. And it was kind of a perfect storm type of thing, right? Rails was just exploding now. You know, it had finally past the point of first they laugh at you, and then what's that saying? I forget, never mind. But you know, it was past the point of coming out and like poking Java in the eye and stuff, and it was beginning to be more mature. People were actually writing business critical apps on it. And so there's these big apps that people had spent tens of thousands of dollars to write, and they're looking for some place to host it, and nobody knows what to do. So that's why this thing was born. And I was a young, naive whippersnapper when we started this thing, and I was the sole support person and the sole guy who deployed everybody's apps for like the first 150 customers. So from fall of 2006, actually the first RailsConf ever was in 2006. That's what happened in 2006 as well. And I don't remember where it was. I think it was Chicago. Yeah? Yeah. And so I gave a talk there about deployment. And that's where I announced the Engine Yard. And we hit a sweet spot. So from that fall, 2006, when we actually launched, through the end of 2007, I think I left my house 2 times. I worked remote. We were kind of a distributed company, and since I was the single 24/7 support guy for the first 100, 150 so customers, I literally lived in my office and my bedroom with my cell phone and would get a couple hours sleep while I went back and forth helping people out. And that was the year I got gray hair. And so literally I went from total nothing to like gray sideburns in a year, which was awesome. It gets your, it gets your geek cred up. So anyway, we built Engine Yard before there was this thing called EC2 and Amazon and all this stuff, right? And so we had to kind of build something that when you squint sideways, it looked like EC2, but there wasn't this whole thing called the cloud that now really doesn't mean jack crap. But in 2007 was when Amazon actually came out, and it was really cool. And had timing been different, we probably would have never done our own hardware in Engine Yard at all. But timing wasn't that way. So 2007 was also the year that we took a venture round of capital, and that was a whole nother change in my life. Like, I'm a self-taught guy. I didn't even graduate high school. I just have a GED. And so I learned a lot of stuff the hard way throughout all this stuff. So anyway, all of us moved to San Francisco to the Silicon Valley where everything supposedly happens. And we moved in next door for Twitter on South Park. And that was the kind of the early days of that cloud era. And so in 2008, this kind of funny other little thing happened. When I started Engine Yard, I started writing a little web framework called Merb, which was just a toy. And I'm sure you guys are aware of how the Ruby community is. They love to make a fight out of 2 things that are half similar, but they're probably friends anyway, but it's always more fun when there's a rivalry. So there wasn't really ever any rivalry, but there was in the public eye, I guess. And so I had just been writing Merb as an experiment to see if you could write something like Rails in Ruby much more efficiently. And you could, it turned out. but you could also cause a lot of ruckus without meaning to. So at the end of 2008, we kind of merged these projects together, I guess, if you'd call it a merge. More like I committed seppuku and gave MERB to DHH on its doorstep and let it go from there. So anyway, 2009, at the end of 2008, actually, AWS had matured quite a bit. When they first came out, EC2 was basically all ephemeral. There was no persistence at all of anything, like even your instances. There was no hard storage, so you really couldn't do much on there without, double backflip juggling things. So, but by into 2008, 2009, it was getting much better, and so at the end of 2008, I went to a cave for like a month, and I basically chopped engine yard off at the knees and removed it from our own hardware and transplanted it on top of Amazon. And then took a team of guys and we built that up from a hack to something that was pretty good and released that in 2009. And that was the beginning of engine yard kind of getting out of its own data centers. And moving on to AWS and on to Terramark and a few other places. So that was a big pivot for a startup, I think. 2010 was kind of like the year that I left Engine Yard. I felt like I had done what I was going to do there, and they were just at this huge growth stage, and so in good hands. And so I moved on to a different project. I went to VMware. And I helped them architect and build Cloud Foundry, which is a little open source platform as a service framework written in Ruby that people tend to like. I think it's a pretty nice piece of code. And it's out there doing its thing now. But it's been a long decade. I'm getting tired of Ruby in the cloud, to be honest. So while I'll always have a lot of love for it, I've been kind of working away at different hobbies and stuff for the last couple of years, trying to figure out maybe what's next. I have this 11-year itch, and don't worry, it's not contagious and it's not as bad as it sounds, that I've discovered, but it's like every 10 or 11 years I end up wanting to do something different with my life, right? For most of the 1990s, I was a glass artist, a glass blower. And then in the early 2000s, I switched to becoming a computer programmer, and I've done that with Ruby and with the cloud for 10 years. And coincidentally, it takes about 10 years to become a master at something, I feel like. And so, not to say I'm a master at anything, but about 10 years it takes to really practicing at something hardcore to get really good at it. And once I feel like I've gotten good at something, I get bored with it, and so I move on to something else. So 2009 was building a glass-blowing school and studio in Bellingham, Washington. The 1990s, not 2009. 1990s. The 2000s was all about Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And 2012 is this new company that I'm actually just launching today called Trinity Labs, which is, the website's up, I think right now, trinitylabs.com. And I'm building 3D printers and laser cutters and software that goes along with that, including a cloud-based system. I'm still doing some Ruby and cloud in the background, but this is a hobby that I picked up over the last couple of years that is in a nascent stage, just like Rails was back in 2004. It's a total hacker's little game that people are doing in their garages, and nobody really knows how to do it plug and play yet. And so I see all kinds of parallels with Rails way back in the day. So I've built a bunch of 3D printers now, and I've come to the conclusion that the market is ripe for somebody to come along and make this easy and make it something like Ruby on Rails, right? Something that people can take and actually use without having to learn everything from the ground up. Because in my opinion, you know, we're all programmers here and we fiddle bits, but really I think atoms are the new bits. And so I'm still going to be a programmer, but I'm just fiddling atoms now of some sort. I have a few pictures here. This is one of our printers we're going to have on sale today, actually, kits of, and there's all kinds of things you can make with these things. And I'm sure you guys have seen a little bit about what 3D printers can do, and it's an absolutely amazing thing to watch. I actually tried to fly here. When I flight here yesterday, I was on a 7 a.m. flight, and I tried to bring this briefcase that I had been working on for like 48 hours before we came here, because I wanted to walk up on stage with it handcuffed to my wrist. It's a new printer I just built that's actually a 3D printer in a James Bond briefcase that you can open up and use on batteries and take anywhere and print stuff with you. But the TSA didn't like that a whole lot. And I wasn't gonna let them check it, so I had to leave that at home. But I think I do have some pictures here. Let's see. There it is. That's why they didn't like it. It looks like a gun, even. Here, wait, let's see. Yeah, so anyway, basically you can open the thing, and with 2 bolts, you take that thing on the far side and you bolt it on the thing on the other side, and in like a minute, you've got a portable 3D printer that runs on big LiPo batteries from RC helicopters and whatnot. And yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah. But you can't print gunpowder, right? So, you know, I guess it's, yeah. I can understand why they didn't let me take it on. It was still a bummer, though, because I was gonna be printing here while we were talking, which would have been cool. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to introduce this stuff and get some people in the Ruby community I know are like me, get them a little bit turned on and excited about this stuff, because it's going to be one of the next big things, I think, as far as, there's a big potential here to change the way the current centralized manufacturing and distribution system works from this monster where everything is made in China or somewhere else and centrally made and distributed out to the edges, right? And it's this one-size-fits-all manufacturing model, because in order to do it big enough to make enough money, you have to make a product that you make 1 million of and then sell, and then everybody buys this thing that's not really right for them, but it's close enough, right? There's a big potential to change that and make it so that the only thing that's centrally manufactured and distributed is raw materials for these printers, and effectively turn manufacturing into a JIT compiler where out at the edges, all these printers make the actual products for people just in time when they want to buy something, with micro customizations that they can do to say, yeah, I want that helicopter for my son, but I want his picture in the cockpit and his name on the side and blah, 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 right? And have that printed. Or, Walgreens has the 1-hour photo you can go upload before you go down there a couple hours later and pick up your photos. So this kind of stuff is gonna sneakily kind of creep into the ecosystem here over the next 5 years. And I hope to be there, kind of be the one building it. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm kind of building the Star Trek replicator, I guess, is really the elevator pitch. So it's fun. And this time, I've basically just kind of built my dream job, I spent a lot of time writing Ruby code and deploying most of your guys' apps and working hard, and I've made some money, and so I'm funding my own startup this time, and I basically made a job that I would be happy to work on for the next 20 years. And yeah, here I go. So wish me luck. And that's about it. I don't know if there's any questions or not, but it was kind of a story. I know it was a little boring, but whatever. Any questions?
Are you going to do any metal printing?
Eventually, yeah. We're looking to expand to more than just plastics, glass and ceramic and metal and all kinds of cool stuff. So there's not a lot on our site right now. It's just kind of a placeholder. But over the summer, we'll have a bunch of different things coming out that you should check out. Yeah.
Do you have any prints on you now?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any prints on you now?
Shoot, did we put in the suitcase? I guess I didn't. I guess they were in the briefcase, and I kind of had to run it home and then get back on the plane, so I forgot to bring them with me. But I do have plenty of photos I can show you. You want to see some cool stuff?
Or even videos?
Yeah, actually, I do have some videos. Let's see if I can get an internet connection. I need to change my display preferences here. 1 second. It's already small.
So with you launching today, what's kind of the entry-level price for the hardware?
One of our printers, the entry-level price right now is about $1,200. But and that's for a kit, right? It's not for an assembled bot yet. But that's the only one we're going to be selling as a kit. We're basically going to be making a whole range of stuff, all the way from stuff that costs between $500 and $1,000, and stuff that costs up to $10,000 or $15,000. But most of it's all going to be pre-assembled, plug and play type stuff, which is with full software suite, CAD modeler, all the stuff. Because right now, the way the whole 3D printing game works is like Ruby on Rails back in 2004 when I first picked it up. There's this beautiful technology in there waiting to be brought out, but it's uglified by the fact that the software is, this hodgepodge of like Python GUIs with a whole page of checkboxes and pull downs and stuff. It's just disgusting, and it takes no less than 4 or 5 programs to go from your CAD modeler to actual printing. You have to export from here, go through here, go through that, go through this. And all that stuff is really at a disgusting stage right now. So I hope to compress it all into one. Like for the modeler, you make a model, you hit print, and you don't think about it. It's just done.
Are you at all interested in getting to the service side? Like there's some companies that launched it last year that are actually doing send us your CADs.
So his question was, am I going to get into the service side, like let people send me models and print them out? Yes, but in a different way than places like Shapeways or whatever, where you just can go online and order models and have them printed. I'm more looking at, well, I'll let that come later.
Do you think that future employees will get a lot more skills that they can model?
I think that the skills of the CAD modeler is going to be a much more desirable trait in the future, yeah. Although I also think that the CAD modeling is going to get much easier to enable people who aren't so technical in order to make stuff that they want, right? And I also foresee a future where, like imagine a hobby shop, right? Right now there's a hobby shop at least in every city in the country. They have to keep a store with a certain size footprint of all kinds of propellers and wheels and tires and whatnot. If they had one of my machines and I'm able to pull off enough cloud to go to all the different manufacturers that make those propellers and all that kind of stuff and get them to start selling their digital artifacts instead of real propellers and whatnot. Now every hobby shop can be a little 1-hour photo kiosk in the parking lot, right? And with a machine, and they can still sell all the same stuff just in time, right? And keep bigger stock on hand by being able to make it right whenever it's needed. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a huge disruption in the way the whole world works. It's all, manufacturing is one of the biggest industries in the world, and everybody needs stuff, right? So, I'm not saying that everybody is going to need a 3D printer, but I think it's going to touch the lives of everybody. Lots of people are going to want to have them for themselves. There's going to be lots of kind of corner fab shops where you can have something made for you and go pick it up in a few hours, and it's going to be bigger professional stuff. So who knows how it's going to be, but it's a really exciting kind of industry, I think. So. Well, these printers will can print two kinds of plastic right now. A lot of what I print is PLA, which is polyacetic acid, and it's basically made out of corn or sugar, and it's completely biodegradable, and it smells like popcorn or waffles when you're printing. It's kind of cool. And you know, so yeah, you might think, oh my God, we're going to have a million printers making little plastic bits and throwing them in the ocean and stuff like that, but you know, it's not. It's you know, everything that people print with is recyclable or biodegradable, and I'll also be creating the filament that is the feedstock for these printers. And so anybody who has a bunch of scrap objects that wants to send it back to me, I can remelt and remake into filament again. So.
When do they ship?
They're shipping now. The first printer, yeah, it looks like this guy. You can go onto the website and go to the store and start ordering them now.
And how big will that printer be?
How big of an area?
Yeah.
300 millimeters by 250 millimeters by 200 millimeters. So it's pretty big.
Yeah.
And there'll be bigger ones and there'll be smaller ones and stuff. But at this size, you know, it's big enough to make a bunch of stuff, and then you can always break something down to smaller pieces of it, and then put it back together to assemble bigger stuff. But yeah, and so one of these is going to cost you $1,200 for a kit. You can assemble in about 4 hours.
What kind of like resolution on parts for like fine detail?
40 micrometer resolution. If you can think about that, yeah, it's really high resolution. I'm able to make metric nuts and bolts all the way down to an M3 metric bolt and nut that will work and just screw together right off of the printer. So, here, let's see. More pictures. I am on the network. Because I have a little bit of time here left still, right? Yeah. Here's some of those printed nuts and bolts. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, everybody's doing the same side. It's all over. But yeah, so they get smaller and smaller. Which is pretty cool because you know, right now the only other printers that can make nuts and bolts as small as I can cost at least 50 grand. And up to $500,000 or whatever, but you can get one for $1,200 and we're doing that now, which is cool.
Actually, are there constraints regarding to what you can print? For example, like if there's something that's really has a
right
like that?
So with a single tool tip, you can print stuff up to a 45-degree overhang, and any more than that, and you're going to need support, which is, you know, if you only have a single tool head, you can print stuff like a support beam that will come up so that that thing can work, and then you snap that off after you're done. But our printers will all have dual print heads within a few months that we're working on, so that you can have one main plastic tip and then another tip that has PVA, which is water-soluble plastic, basically. So you can print the support structures, and then when you're done with your object, you toss it in a bucket of water, and an hour later, all that support dissolves off, leaving you with any shape you could imagine.
How about having a support for like 3D programs? Like you define the shape, and they will add the support structures?
Yeah, no, our software already adds support structures for you. You say add support, and it will add different little supports for you. You don't have to do it yourself. And then that will enable stuff like, you know, like a propeller for a helicopter or something, right? Right now, it's just a single tool tip. You can't make one of those that will work well because the way that they're curved and stuff, the printer's trying to print on the air, it just kind of doesn't work. But with the dissolvable support, you can basically print like a Han Solo, right? Propeller encased in a block, and then you toss it in water, and it dissolves off, and the propeller will be left, right? So, I think you have a question.
Yeah, how long does it take to print like a nut and bolt like that?
So for an M5 metric nut and bolt, it takes 2 minutes. If you do a bunch of them at once, it's even less time. But you know, some prints, like I had those gears here, like these gears, these herringbone mesh gears, that took about 40 minutes to print. But it's used as part of another 3D printer that gets a lot of users, so it's done on slow, high-res, high-strength speed. So,
are you going to print your printers?
We already do. Basically, if you look at, well, there's some more parts, but if you look at this printer here, it's made out of extruded aluminum bars, the black bars. Everything that holds that together is printed on another printer. So we have armies of printers printing parts for new printers to print parts for new printers. Hey.
So how durable can the parts be?
Very durable. The two plastics right now that we mainly use are the PLA and ABS plastic. So ABS plastic is what, it's what iPhones are made out of. It's what Legos are made out of. So it's very durable plastic that has some give. If you bang on it, it has some flexibility give before it breaks. The PLA is much more rigid. So it's got a lot of strength, but it will push to a point, instead of bending, it will just shatter or kind of break, right? So I'm actually working on a few different custom thermoplastics like ABS with carbon fiber nanotubes embedded in it for extra strength, and a few different cool blends of plastic that we've been experimenting with.
So how long until there's a catalog of replacement components for repairing stuff that you're using?
Well, our site that does that will be live in a couple of months.
Awesome.
And then it'll be a matter of how long it takes me to get everybody to put their, go to Kenmore and get all the knobs for all their dishwashers ever made cataloged at my store, so that when your dishwasher knob breaks, you just go, I have model, print, right? So that's the idea.
Any plans to do wax or
The question was, any plans to do wax for lost wax casting? And yeah, you can change out the print heads on these printers, and they're all, the wax printers, the metal printers, the plastic printers, they're all the same. They use a Cartesian robot which places things in X, Y, Z space and says, do this with tooltip, squirt this, right? So most of our printers ship with the plastic extruders, but there are extruders for wax, and there's extruders for chocolate and peanut butter, so you can go and make 3D food and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting to be able to do that. But yeah, that's definitely something we can do.
You mentioned the cord is one of the core components in plastics.
What was the question?
Cord.
Yeah, he said, is corn one of the core components in the plastics? And yes, in the PLA polyacetic acid, it's basically made from sugar. Most of the sugar, it comes from corn or just from sugar cane byproducts, actually, that makes this plastic. And then it's actually, you can eat it if you don't want your teeth to break or whatever, because it's really hard. But it's you could eat it and it's safe for you. It's just basically sugar cooked into this form where it's hard enough to be in plastic.
Does that mean that the industry will rely heavily on subsidies for lower?
I don't think so particularly, because it's actually byproducts of corn and sugar and a number of other things that make that plastic, and that's only one of the plastics. There's already the other type of plastic, like ABS, is used in so many different fields right now that there's not going to be shortages of it anytime soon. And there's also the ability to take other people's scrap plastic and melt it down and extrude it into filament that these printers can use to recycle plastic, which can actually be helpful that way.
What's the software?
I'm sorry?
What's the software?
It's right now it's written in a massive hodgepodge of Python and Ruby and JavaScript and C++ and Haskell and what have you, right? And so we're kind of trying to kind of make this unified tool chain where you have this one 3D modeler called Moment of Inspiration, MOI. You can kind of look that up if you want. He's actually on board as a founder with me. So every one of our printers will ship with a copy of MOI, which is a CAD modeler that's really easy to use, especially for artists and jewelry designers and whatnot. And then all of that crap, 8 programs you have to go through to print, is kind kind of compressed and hidden behind this one program, which is just a print button. And so yeah, we'll be using a lot of Ruby, but we're actually using a lot of JavaScript, because what I want to do is make it so instead of having to install programs on your computer to print, the printer itself will have a tiny embedded web server on the electronics, and it will be on your network with Wi-Fi or with Ethernet, and have a name, and so it will serve up a web page, which is the user interface for printing, and that web page will pull down a JavaScript program from S3 and images, and then when you say, here, take this model and slice it and shoot it to my printer, you're doing it in a website that runs off of the printer, but you're doing the number crunching on your computer to slice the model into code that the printer understands, and then shooting it to the printer to work, so you don't have to install any software. It'll be cross-platform to do it that way. No, you don't need a big massive machine. You just need something better than what runs on the electronics of the machine. So any computer can slice a model fairly easily, and JavaScript is fast these days. So that's why we're writing a special slicing engine. So the way this works is, just very briefly, is you have a model, right? Say a fuzzy little bunny. And to print it with one of these printers, you need to take that model and slice it into layers, right? So you take that bunny and imagine slicing it at every 40 micrometers. So, you know, what is that? That's every 20-something, 25 times in a millimeter. So every millimeter has 25 slices. So if you've got an inch tall, you know, you're gonna have 250 slices. And then you take each of those slices and you generate an XY coordinate plotter for your tooltip to move around and squirt plastic. And so then your printer takes those slices, and well, actually those slices then get converted into what's called G-code, which is a primitive bytecode text format, almost like a bytecode for a computer language compiler. But those instructions tell the machine, you know, move to XY coordinate this, and then do this arc while you squirt plastic, and do this stuff, and then move up a layer, and do the next layer, and move up a layer, and do the next layer. So that's how the printers actually take a 3D model and take, you know, the raw plastic and make the actual model. It's by slicing it into layers, converting that to G-code, and then having a machine that understands how to take those layers and make it a layer at a time.
So is Logo the ideal language?
Pretty much, yeah. Turtle, yeah. I'm sorry? Yeah, so there's already one called the Thingiverse, thingiverse.com, which is worth checking out. There's thousands and thousands of objects up there, but we have our own in the works. The Thingiverse is a little bit, it's run by one company. It's a little bit of a shill for that company. So we have a Git-backed, it's like kind of like a GitHub for 3D objects, where if you don't care about Git, it's hidden underneath, but all of your object files are stored in Git. And that way, as you make changes to them, you can see a visual diff of the objects, not just of the text or the code that represents the objects, but like you can see the object, see the next version, and then see in red like where it changed and stuff like that. So cool software that works for that. And all basically every single thing we're making is open source. All of our hardware design is open source. All of our software is open source, except for one thing, which is the CAD modeler. So that's a pre-existing closed source program, but everything else is completely 100% open source. Well, right now we can basically, the question was what file format does it intake? So basically it can come from any CAD file format. Any CAD program can export what's called an STL file, which is an XML-ish text file that represents a polygon image, a polygon set of your image. And so the slicing program will intake any STL file, output G-code, which is shot to the printer and prints. We're going to use the open NURBS file format for ourselves, which can contain G-code, contain STLs, contain other stuff. But it can keep the actual model in a vectorized mathematical format instead of a polygon image or a polygon model has already kind of been rasterized, like the difference between a bitmap and a vector, right? So, Yep. Yeah, there is a couple of open source programs to convert to STL from any proprietary format. Yeah, cool. I guess one more question.
Yeah, so when you're choosing between 110 volts and 220 volts for the heat bed, is that really about where you're going to be using it more than the performance?
Yeah, it's really about if you're going to be in the EU or in the US, right? The same heat bed will work in either place, but it's a matter of the kind of the plug and the converter and stuff like that.
And what's the big difference between these three screw choices?
The acme screw, the lead screw, it's a better resolution of your Z depth and the height of your layers. So the cheaper stuff is more coarse, right? And will have not as fine grained layer height, which is what kind of controls your resolution.
And so the default is the highest resolution?
Yeah.